I couldn't tell you how long I've been waiting to do this video. What's up guys, it's the new sensation, Bigger Notation here, and today I have the honour of bringing you guys a deck that I have been working on for an extremely long time, and as you guys can see from the title of the video, that deck today is going to be Blue Boujack. So I've not had the confidence to bring this deck to a proper tournament for a really long time. I know some of you older viewers might remember I brought it to a card market regional a very long time ago. I think it was last year in July. And I scrubbed out in the I was doing really well, and I scrubbed out in the last round and missed my chance to get top 16 with the deck, which was a real shame. But we're back today. I think that this current meta is a really strong one for Blue Boujack, and I'll probably break that down in a video, which I'll talk about in a second. But this is the deck that I went X1 with at the Dragon Ball Super Leeds Fest event in the UK. So for those in America, I think that's the same as like Texas and Miami for you guys. So I managed to go X1 in Swiss, which left me in the position of first place after Swiss because there were no XOs by the end of Swiss. I managed to beat the last undefeated in my last round of Swiss. And we weren't playing with the play till undefeated rule, I assume because there was a top cut as well. And then I got knocked out in the first round of top 8 by my mate Jamie over on the Scrub Games channel. I definitely recommend you check him out as well because he managed to take both Leeds and Nottingham Fest events, so he's currently he's got 2 victories under his belt over the course of the 4 Fest events that are going to be happening in the UK. So I definitely recommend checking him out, especially if you're interested in Android 18 Mill or Red Jiren, because those are the 2 decks that he took to each of the Fest events. So he'll be doing like a big guide video and deck breakdown and stuff similar to what I'll be doing as well. But back to what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be profiling Blue Boujack. I want to preface this by saying this is going to be obviously a deck profile, but I'm also going to be releasing more of a deck breakdown and sort of guide, as well as like a tournament report video style of thing later in the week. And that's going to be where I go over some of the fundamentals that I think are really important to understand when playing Blue Boujack, because it plays very differently to a lot of the decks in the game currently. Obviously, one of the main outliers from this deck compared to other decks is the leader doesn't have any draw effects on any of the card. So it plays very differently to like standard Dragon Ball stuff does, and it's very fun to play. So I'm going to release a separate video sort of explaining and breaking down how to play the deck a little bit more in depth, and I'm also going to be using some examples from my experience in the Leeds Fest tournament. So like breaking down a little bit more some of my matchups, how I played during the day to counter each of the different matchups and some things like that. But to give you guys a little bit more of an understanding, just the reason I took Blue Boujack in this specific tournament was because I think the match is in a really good spot for Blue Boujack. With the bans of Fu Shrouded and Self-Surge Leader, that's 2 really problematic cards that were taken out of the meta for Blue Boujack, and the meta has kind of shaped up to be mostly red and yellow populated. Green is pretty much nowhere to be seen outside of King Cold, and there's a couple of blue decks running about like Soul Striker and SS4 Ramp, but that's pretty much it. So in terms of meta, Blue Boujack is in a really good spot because a lot of its bad matchups have kind of been taken out from the last ban list. But that's for a later video, so if you guys are interested in that, definitely subscribe, of course. But we'll hop straight into the deck profile. So, and as you guys might know, the Fest events are going to be best of ones pre-side, so definitely bear that in mind. That did have a big impact on my deck building, and I'll obviously go through the sideboard throughout the day as well, or throughout the video as well. To start off with the leader, we've got it's got a permanent of reducing the combo cost of mono Blue Bojack Brigade cards in your hand by 1. That's just important because all of the Bojack Brigades have got combo costs of 1, and so it means that their combo cost of 0 in this deck, just to keep them more limited to this particular leader. And then the leader has an activate battle of once per turn. You combo with a mono blue Bojack Brigade from your energy and then replace it from the top of your deck in rest mode. You awaken, it's exactly the same as the Sin Shenron leader, where if your life is at 3 or less, or if you have your 4-cost Unison in play, you untap 1, draw 2, and flip this card over. On the backside, he maintains the permanent and maintains the activate battle, and he gains an auto. For 1 blue energy, you discard a card from your hand, then you untap 4 mono blue energy, but you can't activate counter skills from your hand for the turn, and you can only activate mono blue skills from your hand for the turn. So that's pretty much the leader. As you can see, the backside doesn't really offer much of a difference to the front side. It's mainly just the 5k boost that you'll get on your leader. But having that auto is really nice, and you do definitely use the auto. I'd say like once or twice per game. The auto can come up, and it just really means that during your opponent's turn you're able to make those really big greedy pushes and establish your big guys down onto the board and start clearing through their board. So to start off with, the really key cards we have 4 Zangia. This is just a card you want to be seeing in every single one of your opening hands. This is like one of the best cards in the deck. It's very simple. When it's comboed from energy, you draw a card. So it's like having 4 extra super combos, and you'll notice a lot in this deck, a lot of the cards are just like having extra super combos, which is obviously incredibly nice. So basically, in the early turns, you see this card in your hand and you charge it instantly. Then to go on with some other cards you want to see early on, we have 4 copies of Goku the Calamity. So this is just a simple 1-drop cantrip. When this card is played, you look at the top 5 cards of your deck. You can either add your blue 4-cost Unison to your hand, or you can add a Bojack Brigade that costs 3 or less amongst them to your hand. The restriction of the 3 or less Bojack Brigade is actually really annoying, because it makes this card whiff a lot more than it would if it didn't have that restriction, because the 4-cost Bojack and the 8-cost Bojack are not going to be targets for this card. But it's still a really nice card to have, and the second effect is what makes me push this card to 4 copies rather than 2 or 3. And the second effect is an activate battle once per turn for 1 energy. This card gains 11k power and critical until the start of your next main phase. So that will make this card a 15k swinger. And it will be critical, of course, which is incredibly helpful in the slower matchups where it's more resource based. You want to be critting them down so they lose cards from their hand. And it also lasts until your next turn. So if your opponent is trying to attack into this with cards, they're going to have to attack with stuff that's 15k or more. And then if they're attacking with stuff that's 15k, you can just free combo from energy from your leader effect and still keep it alive. And often the free combo will help you develop your board a little bit more. So the rest of the 1-drops I'm running is 2 Beto the Cruel. This is paired with Goku the Calamity, kind of like its twin, but slightly worse. So this is when this card is played, you draw a card rather than searching the top 5. And it has a similar activate battle to Goku, but instead of gaining crit, it gains double strike. The reason you run this card is to deal with the decks in the meta that kind of rely on an early Unison. This card doesn't have much utility at the moment. It's mostly strong against green decks like King Cold with their King Vegeta Unison, or any deck that runs the SS Bardock Paternal Unison, because you can swing with this and hit for double strike and take 2 markers off. But currently, green isn't really played that much, and the main turn 2 or turn 1 or 2 Unisons are going to be in red, with either red Jiren slamming down the Topo Unison, or any sort of red like U7 deck style of deck. Often they're running the Piccolo Junior Unison, and so this is really nice for getting through the Piccolo Junior Unison. The only issue is a lot of the red U7 Goku decks have been opting to run 3-cost Unisons, which are obviously 20k power, so that makes Beto the Cruel a little bit more redundant. This was a card that I sided out a fair amount during the fest events, especially when I sided in other cantrips from my side deck that were a little bit more useful. So against a lot of the yellow matchups, which a lot of the yellow decks were not even running Unisons, like Trunks and Vegeta, I was siding that card out and siding in cards like East Kai instead. But I'll break that down a little bit more when we get to the side deck, of course. And then for our big Bojack plays, we've got 4 of Bojack the Evil Doer. Obviously, we've got the new alternative art fest stamp, looking crazy too. Had to borrow 2 of these from my mate Jamie so that I could flex on them during the event, of course. But for any of you guys who were around during the Galactic Buster meta, this card, you obviously know that this card is really strong. But he's even stronger in Bojack because he can be comboed from hand without paying the combo cost. So as with all of these Bojack Brigades, they're going to be comboing in for 0. And then for 1 blue energy and 1 of any colour, at the end of the battle when this card is comboed with, you play it. It's a 20k dual attacker, and when it's played, it bottom decks any battle card. It doesn't ignore barrier, but it isn't restricted by cost. So this is like your most efficient way of dealing with big threats in the deck. And against decks like Sin Shenron or Gogeta Xeno that like to go with really high cost battle cards, this is a really important card to see, because oftentimes what you'll do is you'll stop their attacks either with like a hard negate or comboing out and playing a couple of guys, or with like a deadly defender, which we've got later in the deck, and then you'll want to combo this in during your turn to remove the big threat like the Omega Shenron Triple Striker, or like the thwarting the Dark Empire Gogeta. So this is definitely a really key card in the deck, because for 2 energy you're getting a 20k dual attacker and you're removing almost anything in the game. And then for our other flexible removal card, we have 4 of the Big Bojack. This card is a 4 of, like, absolutely you have to run 4 of it. And there's a couple of reasons why, but the main big reason is even if you're not reaching turn 4 to play this card, he is another extra super combo, because this is a 1 cost 10k, but because of your leader's permanent, it is considered a 0 cost 10k because it reduces the combo cost by 1. So you've effectively with this and Zangia, you've got 8 super combos that aren't your actual super combos, which is insanely good for keeping your hand up. This guy is a 30k double strike dual attacker. He evolves for 5 over a Bojack that costs 3 or 4, so this guy or another guy, which we'll get into later. And if you evolve it, you draw 2 cards. That was not a skill that I used throughout the entire day. It just never came up. It's so much more expensive than its other way of being played, which is for 4 energy. After you combo with this card from your hand or energy, you draw a card, bottom deck an opponent's battle card, and then play this card in rest mode. So a couple of reasons why that auto is so good is because it's all 1 auto to start off with. So if your opponent has a card out like Fu the Dark Banisher, you'll only have to warp 1 card from your hand, and you'll be able to remove it and play this card all in the same auto and replace the card that you warped from your hand. And then this is obviously a nice way to remove the Fu the Dark Banisher with his removal inbuilt. And this also gets around the 9-drop Sin extremely efficiently, because it removes the card before the Bojack gets played. And so that means what you can do is you can remove the 9-drop Sin with the bottom deck effect, and then play the Bojack, and then the Bojack skills are not negated, because the 9-drop Sin has been removed from the field already. So that's the main application for that. But something else to note is this card does play itself in rest mode, so unless you're evolving it, which you're not really going to be evolving this, you're not really able to use it aggressively. And if you do evolve it, then you miss out on the removal, and you don't draw the 1, but you will draw the 2 on the evolve. And then he's got a second auto of, if this card is in rest mode, if your opponent swings with a battle card, you untap 1 of your mono blue energy and then choose 1 of their energy and tap it down. So this is extremely useful, because it means if you leave 4 energy open to bring this guy in, not only do you get a draw 1 and you get a removal, and you get a 30k dual attack double striker that can threaten your opponent if they leave this alive going into your next turn. But if they then if they want to keep pushing through with battle cards, this guy is going to tap down your opponent's energy and give you more energy to play with, and that means that you're going to be able to combo in more stuff and bring in more stuff. So this card is like the main boss monster of the deck, and he's really important. And another thing to note is he costs 4 energy, and your leader can untap 4 on the awakened side. So a very easy play to do is when you've got your Boo Unison out, which is the obvious choice of Unison for this deck, you get an energy back at the end of your turn. So you use that energy to trigger your leader's auto, untap 4 on your opponent's attack, and then combo in this Bojack for 0 because of the permanent on leader. tap 4, draw a card, remove a battle card, and play this in rest mode. And then if your opponent attacks with a battle card, you then gain an energy back again. So this deck untaps a lot of energy. Energy is never a problem for this deck. Going on to some of the smaller Bojack brigades, we've got 4 Goku with the Evil Doer. So the main reason I'm running 4 of this card is just because he's a 1-cost 20k body. So he comes in for 1 after being comboed with, and then when he's played he removes a 1-drop. So the on-play effect isn't as great as most of the other Bojack brigades, but it's still pretty helpful, and a lot of decks are going to be running 1-drops. But the main reason you play this is just because it's effectively a 1-drop 20k, so it's really nice to just be able to have stick about and then swing into stuff. And then 2 Beidou the Evil Doer. This is the only other crit guy in the deck, and this is, along with the 1-drop Goku, this is often what you're using to pressure your opponents early in the game, especially if they haven't awakened yet. Because you don't want to be attacking with non-critical cards in this deck until they've awakened and until you've started to control the board out, because you don't want to give them more cards in hand. So he's unique critical, he comes in for 1 energy after combo. If he's played during your opponent's turn, he then untaps an energy, so he effectively comes in for 0 during your opponent's turn, and then he has an activate main for 1 energy. Once per turn you can bottom deck an opponent's battle card that costs 3 or less. So oftentimes you just slam this guy when your opponent attacks your leader. You bring it in for a net 0 energy. And then during your turn, you can use it to bottom deck a load of things, really, like Mecha Freezer, Robotic Riposts, any sort of aggressive stuff that U7 Goku is trying to push on you, like the Android 17 Double Striker. There's just like so many applications for Beidou, and it's a really strong card. The only reason why I've only got it at 2 is because of the unique tag, and because often you don't need it past the 1 turn that you use it to remove something and then attack with. You just don't really need more than 2 in my opinion. And then we also have 2 of the 3-cost Bojack. This is the AOD Bojack, and this is your other evolved target for your 8-drop. I like to refer to them as Little Bojack, Medium Bojack, and then Big Bojack, because Big Bojack is cool as hell. And then, so this guy is a 15k Deadly Defender. He comes in for 1 energy, and he also plays himself in rest mode, similar to the Big Bojack. He has an auto. When this card is KO'd, you draw a card. And then its permanent is, when this card is in rest mode, your opponent's battle cards that cost equal to or greater than the opponent's energy cannot attack leader cards. So this is just a nice Deadly Defender for big stuff, and if you can drop it early, like turn 1 or turn 2, it's a Deadly Defender for pretty much anything, which is extremely helpful. I was originally running this at 3 copies, but I've cut it down to 2 because there's a lot of black in the meta at the moment, especially with like Gogeta Zeno and Trunks Zeno, all of that stuff, and there's also a lot of red in the meta currently, and so the removal of being KO'd isn't as like easy to get off anymore, because most red decks will just minus 15k through it with like the 4-drop Vegeta or the counterplay Goku or something, or counterplaying with Yamcha. And then black is going to thwarting through it and just warp it, and then this card kind of becomes null and void. So it's not as good in a lot of matchups currently. Like, it's not as good as in aggro matchups, which is weird to say. The only aggro matchup that it's really good in is against Sin aggro, because it can stop their triple strikers and stuff. So a lot of the time I was siding this out against Red U7 Goku and against Gogeta Zeno. And then for the last Bojack Brigade we play 2 Bujin the Commando. This guy is just a 1-drop negate, but you can activate his counter attack from your energy by discarding a card from your hand, paying the energy cost, and then you replace the energy from the top of the deck in rest mode. And so he's just another nice target to have in energy. All of these cards are cards you want to be flipping into energy, because a really important part of this deck is being able to flip a Bojack Brigade from the top of your deck into your energy once you've comboed with one from your leader, because it means at that point you're effectively drawing new cards every single turn, because your energy kind of plays as your hand. And so if you're able, the more Bojack Brigades that you have in the deck, the better. But obviously the Bojack Brigades are not, like, there's a limit to how many you'll want, because you want to play other good stuff as well. And speaking of other good stuff, we have my Unison lineup. I only went with 3 Majin Buu Unison, and the reason behind that is I ran a copy of the Gotenks Unison in main. The 3 Buu Unison worked great for me. I saw this I think every game except for 2 of them, so 5 out of the 7 rounds, I saw this on turn 4. And this is just like the standard Unison you want to play. It was kind of made for this deck. And the untap 1 every single turn is really, really nice because it facilitates your leader auto once you've awakened, and once you've got the Unison out, you have the ability to awaken. I found it more and more important to just awaken once you get the Unison down, even if you can't make the use of the double activate battle trigger, just getting 1 activate battle trigger off, because on the awaken turn you can use the front side activate battle, and then awaken and use the backside activate battle all in the same turn. So if I have like some spare Bojack brigades I want to combo in, I'll be doing that on the awaken turn. But a lot of the time it's just important to get your awaken off while you can, especially if you're on higher life, because once the Boo Unison is down or the Gotenks Unison is down, the opponents will often focus the Unison down, and then you don't have a chance to awaken because you don't have a combo step, and you also don't have the chance to use your activate battle because again you don't have a combo step. And then once the Unison's dead, you're stuck again having to wait to go down to 3 life, and that's when things can get a little bit scarier. So just awakening when you get the Unison down in most matchups is going to be quite important. And it also means you have access to the auto skill, which is very nice because it means you're able to get your 8 drops down much more consistently. And then the Gotenks Unison was in here mostly for yellow matchups because I was expecting a lot of yellow decks. This is the main deck out to the Slug engine, but it's also helpful against things like Trunks and Vegeta, removing their blocker, Trunks, which has barrier, removing Poutine, which has barrier, is all really nice. And then if I don't need to use the removal, I can -2 to just draw 2. Although I think every time I played this in the tournament, I felt it better to just -3. Even if they didn't have stuff that had barrier, this card was just really nice for some like instant removal. And another reason why this card's good against yellow is because Riposte doesn't block Unison attacks. So what you can do if you're looking to try and kill them through a Riposte, and you have a Boo Unison on board, you swing with your battle card to bait out the Riposte, you swing with Boo Unison after Riposte has come down, and then you can tap 4 over the Boo Unison, bring out Gotenks, and then you've got another 2 swings on the Gotenks because it's a dual attacker. So in most situations, Boo Unison is the better card to play, but Gotenks just has a little bit more utility against yellow, and in a best of 3 format, having this 1-off tech just gives you a little bit more potency when it comes to game 1 against yellow, which is obviously very nice. And then for some of the like support untapping cards, we obviously have 4 Galactic Buster. There's a reason this card was limited to this leader, and it's because the card is nuts. Even times where you don't necessarily need to use this card, it's good to use this card because it's a hard limit once per turn. And so if your opponent is just swinging greedily, you can respond, and you've already used your leader's activate battle, you can respond with this card just to develop your board a little bit further by using a card from your energy that costs 1 to play, or if you have extra energy open, you can use that energy to play bigger stuff. A nice combo that I like doing with this is using it to bring in a Bedo the Cruel, or not Bedo the Cruel, Bedo the Evildoer, the crit guy. Because what you can do is you can Galactic Buster in Bedo. Galactic Buster goes to your energy, you tap 1 to play the Bedo at the end of combat. You can then resolve Galactic Buster to tap an energy, and then because you have no energy to tap down, it just kind of fizzles. And then you can resolve Bedo's on play auto to untap 1 because it's your opponent's turn. And so you effectively get a 15k crit guy out, which has inbuilt removal. You get a draw from Galactic Buster, and you get an energy from Bedo the Cruel. So that's just a nice play, especially if your leader's awakened and you've tapped out, because that will then give you the energy to use for your leader's untap effect, and you just kind of pop off from there, to be honest. So for some of the rest of the free untapping stuff, we have our super combos, which is 4 of Zeno Edge of Space. This is by far easily the best super combo you can run in this deck, because it helps you fix your energy if you flip non-Bojack brigades into your energy. What you can do is you can super combo, add back the non-Bojack brigade card, stick a Bojack brigade into your energy, and the Bojack brigade in your energy has effectively stayed in your hand because Bojack Brigades and your energy feel like they're in your hand with this deck. So you still get the like pseudo draw a card, because you added the card from your hand to your energy, but it just turns your energy into a toolbox of cards you can add back to your hand at any one time. And so this not only fixes your hand, but it fixes your energy. It gives you an untap, so it's sort of like the red-blue Beerus super combo, and it's just like perfect for this deck. It acts as a red-blue Beerus super combo, but it also gives you pseudo draws. So it's like having extra awakens, basically, like a draw one untap one every time you use this, which is nuts. And then the fact that it's live at 5 life instead of 4 is really helpful, because it means that you're able to awaken on higher life and still have it not affect your super combos, because you're obviously able to awaken as soon as you get your 4-cost Unison down. And then I'm only running 3 Senzubin. Senzubin is not as strong in this deck, because a lot of the times you want to be tapping out to play your Bojack cards, and then untapping from 0 energy using either Zeno, Galactic Buster, or your 8-drop Bojack auto when they attack with a battle card. And so Senzubin isn't as great as it is in a lot of other blue decks. It's obviously really helpful against aggro, because the plus 5k on leader, especially early on in the game, is really nice, and especially combined with your leader's activate battle to give you another free combo. So you can go up to like 20k to stop some attacks, and then of course the untapping is really nice, especially if you can combine this card with Galactic Buster. You can from 0 energy Galactic Buster in a medium-sized Bojack, so the 4-drop one. Senzubin using the energy you get from Galactic Buster, so you go up to 20k or 25k if you're awakened on leader, and then you can tap the 2 energy you have open to bring in the Bojack the Evildoer and spin something to the bottom of the deck. So Bean definitely has its utility in this deck. It's just not as strong as it is in other blue decks, because you have so much energy to work with just constantly. And then onto the like weird text that I've added in, or like little one-offs that I have. I used to have like 9 one-offs in this deck, because I was prepping it for a best of 3 format, and then found out it was best of 1 pre-side, and so kind of changed around some of the ratios and moved some stuff to the side deck and made my deck a little bit more consistent. But to start things off, we have 1 Realm of the Gods Beerus Destroys. This card just feels so good in this deck, and I kind of want to up it to 2 copies. I do have 1 in the side as well, which I'll go into, of course, later. But this is like a 1-cost 10k super combo that you can, or not a super combo, but a 1-cost 10k pseudo super combo that you can use. Because you pay the 1 energy for it, you give something 10k, and then if it's your turn, you can place one of your opponent's battle cards that cost greater than their energy to the bottom of the deck, and if it's your opponent's turn, you draw a card and then place a 2-cost or less battle card to the bottom of the deck. So most of the time you're just using this as a pseudo super combo with the pay 1, draw a card, gain plus 10k, and then occasionally it comes up where you can bottom deck something as well, which is nice. But it also has its utility for removing big stuff during your turn, like you can use it to remove 9-drop Sin, you can use it to remove the 6-drop Thwartings, you can remove the 8-drop Thwartings too, I guess. But like, this is a way that you can play with if you don't draw the 4-drop Bojack, and that's why I'm considering upping this to maybe 2 copies, because especially the 1 energy is really helpful in this deck, because something important to be able to do in this deck is using your energy before you lead a free combo, and so that's why we have such a huge number of 1-drops in this deck compared to a lot of decks. Just having cantrips to make efficient use of your energy is really important, and so you can using this during your turn just as a way to use your energy and remove something is obviously really nice as well, but most of the time you're using it during your opponent's turn. I'm also running 2 copies of Chilled's Army. I was running this at 1, and then I made like a very last minute decision the day before or the night before leaving to up it to 2, because I had 1 one-off space that I was flickering between a bunch of different cards. I was running Baby Golden Avenger, I was running Essus Cabba Proud Zenith, I was running the 7-drop Kefla that reduces itself for every blue battle card you have, and I was running the new 6-drop Goku Negate that came out for blue, and I've tried all of those cards out and they all felt fine in some matchups and completely lackluster in other matchups. So I just chucked in another Childs, and it feels amazing. Like, this card is so good for the deck, because against aggro it's another negate, but against almost every deck, once you get Boo Unison down, your opponent's going to start attacking the Boo Unison. And so you can use this to not only defend 2 attacks on your Boo Unison, because you negate the one attack, block the other attack, but because of the fact that you gain a blocker from it, you can then force a combo step on your opponent, which means you then have the ability to use Leader's auto on the backside, bring in an 8-drop Bojack or a 4-drop Bojack, or just any of your combo into play stuff, and then start taking apart their board whilst they're trying to hit down your Boo Unison. And if you're able to back up a Boo Unison with this, you're able to stop 2 attacks guaranteed, and effectively stop 3 attacks if you're able to remove another card. And so if they... like, it's very, very unlikely that they're then on top of that going to be able to remove all 4 markers from your Boo Unison. So this card just comes in super nice, and that is really helpful against both aggro and control, because both styles of decks are going to be going after your Boo Unison once you've established it, unless you're already on really low life. Then maybe the aggro decks will go for your leader. But then for some of the other one-offs I'm running 1 All Too Easy. This card is nice because you can use it in tandem with your leader's auto. So this is often the card that you discard for your leader's auto if you have it in hand at the time of using it. But your leader's auto only restricts you from using counters from your hand for the turn, so you can use this card from your drop area, and you can also use the Bojack negate that I mentioned earlier that plays from your energy. You can actually use both those cards in the same turn that you use the auto, after you've used the auto. So that's the main utility of this card and the Bojack negate that I mentioned earlier. And then for secret rare, of course, we're running Baby Hatch. For those that are on a budget, I definitely recommend Super Pycon, and I have played Super Pycon for a very long time in this deck. And it works really well, it catches a lot of people off guard, and it offers you an extra finisher, which this deck can kind of struggle with, and which we're going to talk about with these last 2 cards of the deck. But Baby Hatch is just really nice. I think I drew it like 3 or 4 times throughout the tournament, but there were definitely 2 rounds where I had it in hand and I just didn't use it, because a lot of the time I was against yellow, and I'm obviously going to fear cooler counter when dropping Baby Hatch against them. There was one time where I dropped Baby Hatch against a yellow Trunks Vegeta deck when they had 5 energy open, and so I knew they could cooler counter me, but I knew that if they did that, they then couldn't follow it up with anything that was hugely impactful and then be able to defend themselves come my turn. But we'll talk about that in the later video, which I've mentioned already, where I break down my matchups. So stay tuned for all of that stuff soon to come. For the last 2 one-offs of the deck, I'm running 1 Turning the Tide and 1 Food the Dark Banisher. So Turning the Tide is obviously an incredibly strong card. Being able to drop it and just have this as an almost guaranteed win condition. Once you've built up a board, you just stall till turn 7 and drop this guy, and you kind of auto-win. Because of the time rules, and because it was best of 1 pre-side, and it was 30-minute rounds, this card was not a card that I was able to drop very often during the tournament. I was able to drop it 1 game, I believe, that we reached turn 7 and I played this. I think I reached turn 7 in like half of the rounds that I played, but there were just times where I didn't want to drop this, or I didn't see it. And so the one time I dropped it was against Soul Striker. Shout out to Luke Jackson playing Soul Striker. This card just wins, especially in those blue matchups, because blue versus blue takes a really long time, and then they can't really do much to stop the Android 17 coming down. And it's not like a color that runs a lot of blockers like yellow does, or anything like that. And then the 1 Through the Dark Banisher, this was a really nice tech from Jamie over on Scrub Games. I've mentioned him enough times this video. But he recommended it to me because obviously Fu Shrouded got banned in the last ban list, and that was a card that was extremely strong in this deck because it comes down a turn earlier than Android 17, and it locks out decks that Android 17 can't, like Yellow Sin Shenron that has a load of the blocker revenge guys, like Wish Zamasu, which doesn't really get as hurt by Android 17 as you might think, because they obviously have their blockers, and then if they can get more cards in hand from taking life, they'll be able to Aegis and keep doing all of their stupid shit. And just, it generally against yellow Android 17 doesn't do all that much, and so Through the Dark Banisher is a way of kind of pushing out yellow, and I think I dropped this like 4 times throughout the tournament, and it was insane. The only downside to this card is it's the only black card in the deck, and I have charged this into my energy like a good 3 times during the tournament, which was really sad. But again, that's another reason why Zeno Super Combo is so incredibly good for this deck, because you see this in your energy and your opponent attacks you, and you just go, okay, I'm going to grab this, and then I'm going to drop it during my next turn. And so as long as you can stick a big board behind Fu the Dark Banisher, even if your opponent has a big hand, you can just like kill them through so much stuff, which is really ridiculous. I managed to kill a Control Sin player through a blocker and like 2 Zamasu super combos in their hand with this guy, and he was on 6 life at the start of the turn, which was really insane. But again, that's for another video, which you guys will see soon. But that's the main deck list. I'll go over my side deck. As I mentioned before, it was a best of 1 pre-side event, so the side deck kind of part of the main deck as well, but more like techie stuff at the same time. The first card I was running was 3 East Kai Keeping Watch. 2 of these I did borrow for the event. I only own the 1 copy of East Kai, which is a bit of a shame because it's an uncommon, so maybe I just need to find some somewhere. But this card is really good this format because it just does wonders against yellow decks. There was a yellow Trunks Vegeta where I had one of these stick about on the board, and he bottom decked like 4 or 5 cards to play the game against me, and I managed to get him to 2 cards in hand by turn 3 because this card just stuck about, and then I followed it up with a Fu the Dark Banisher, and I was like, you can't play any cards now. Like, it was really, really strong. But East Kai does a lot. And it's also fairly nice against blue decks, just because they tend to have like body negates like Sun Gohan, Baby's Minion, Hero Prospects, all of that kind of stuff. Next card, well, the next 2 cards that I'm running are 2 Dirty Bursts and 3 Tapion Savior from Another Time. So for these cards, I need to give a massive, massive shout out to Tom Smith, aka Iratorum, over on Team Deck Planet. He actually came 2nd in this tournament overall, even after Top Cut, with his Android 16 list, and I'll have a link. He's going to be doing a deck profile on that for his Team Deck Planet, so I'll have a link for that in the description. But like, huge shout out to him for these cards, because I didn't consider either of these cards, and he mentioned Dirty Burst to me, and I was like, oh my god, that's insane, because it locks out. It means that U7 Goku can't really go so long against you, because their 8-drop can't swing to rip out your hand. If they drop it, then you just Dirty Burst, and their secret rare, if you're ever in a situation where you've tapped out without a Boo Unison against their secret rare, then you can Dirty Burst, or not like tapped out, but like you don't have a way to remove it. You can Dirty Burst on their secret rare to stop their like big, I think it's like a triple strike dual attacker or something. But most of the time you're able to just deal with their secret rare with a Boo Unison -1, so this is mainly for the 8-drop Goku that comes in, because you don't want to get your hand ripped apart. And then it's also for Aggro Sin, which actually came up. My last round was against Aggro Sin, and Dirty Burst kind of carried me in the finals for that. But yeah, Dirty Burst is just a good card. And then the tech of the day that also Tom Smith came up with was this Tapion Unison. So it's got a couple of autos. The +1 is an auto when your opponent attacks. Don't read those. They're for Trunks Future. The only reason this card matters is for its -2 activate main. So the -2 activate main reads, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards, negate its skills for the turn, and place it under this card. Now the reason why this card is so good is because it's your out to Wish Zamasu, it's your out to 5-drop Frieza, and it's your out to Control Sin. Something important to note is this has a similar ruling to the, I think it's a Caulifla Unison that came out for Kale Ramp, where if this card uses its -2 effect, and then when it only has 2 markers, it will go straight to the drop, and it won't be able to actually remove the battle card it's choosing. It will just negate the skills, because it can no longer place the battle card under this card in a Unison area. So if you're going to be playing this for the -2 effect, you want to be tapping at least 3 energy for it. You still negate its skills if you -2 on 2 markers, but you just remove the card. Like it's not hard. But yeah, this card comes up. This card was my main answer for Wish Zamasu. I didn't face any Wish Zamasu throughout the day, but in testing, Wish Zamasu was like a really, really horrendous matchup that would just end with me milling out every single time. But this is your out to Wishimasu. When they tap out to play their big 9-drop, you just slam this guy down and then eat the 9-drop, and it goes through indestructible because it negates the skills. It also has really good application against the 5-drop Golden Freezer, which is a pain for this deck because it locks you out of counters, and even though you don't play many negates in this deck, there are definitely times where you need to negate attacks, and so this will help you deal with the Golden Freezer. And then it also has application against Control Sin because you can remove the 9-drop, and that did end up actually coming up, the Control Sin matchup, although I didn't remove a 9-drop, I removed the 5-drop Golden Freezer, which he was running. But again, you'll have to stay tuned for the next video on that one where I release my guide and matchup breakdown. Some other cards I was running, my side deck was like pretty messy, to be honest. After the previous 3 cards, my side deck is very, very like kind of everywhere. I was siding 2 Dabura Ritual at hand. This was in the case that I played against Hand Destruction. I didn't play against a green deck all day, which was lucky because this deck doesn't do so good against green. But this was my way of trying to deal with green. In the future, if the meta continues to stay the way it is, I might just cut Dabura and hope that I don't play against green decks, because I feel like even if I side in those 2 Daburas, hand control is still like a bad matchup, and there's always the chance I don't see the Daburas, and that just feels bad. It's not gonna auto win me the matchup, and so like maybe it's worth just trying to dodge out on the hand control decks, and I don't know, filling up my side deck with better cards. But then the rest of my side deck is just one-offs. So I've got 1 Baby Golden Avenger, 1 SSG Goku Miraculous Transformation, 1 Proud Zenith, 1 Senzu and 1 Realm of the Gods. So we'll go through these cards individually. Baby Golden Avenger is mostly for those long blue matchups, because my fear is against like a slow Soul Striker deck that if they win the dice roll, then they can slam down an Android 17 before I can, and if they've got a board to back that up, then I just lose. So my solution was to side in a Baby Golden Avenger, and then I have an extra endgame card along with Android 17 and Fu. And because this card can come down earlier, and I'm often gonna have board control against a Soul Striker deck, I'm able to slam this down when they go to like Floodgate, negate me out. This card also has its applications against slower yellow decks when you want to push through a riposte, or even if they're running Pan Secret Rare, you can use this on Pan. But most of the time this is just for slow blue decks, but you can side it in against yellow. I think I sided it against 1 yellow deck maybe. This Goku, this was meant to be a second Android 17 that I sided, but I realized I didn't have one on me when I arrived at the event, so I just sided the Goku instead. I never drew the Goku, so it didn't end up mattering at all. I did side it in against a couple of decks. I honestly don't know what the application for this card is, kind of like a mid-range aggro deck. I sided it in against, like, I think Gogeta, Zeno, and also Trunks and Vegeta, the yellow one. But I didn't end up drawing it. It's quite nice against aggro and mid-range. It's a nice card, but the issue is you want to use it in tandem with your leader's auto, and if you use your leader's auto first, you then can't negate with the Goku, so it kind of gets a bit like tricky to use. The next card is Proud Zenith. I was originally maining one and siding one, and then I cut it for the Chilled Zami reinforcements. This is another out to the Lord Slug package in yellow, and it also has just generally nice barrier removal for 4 costs or less. It costs 3 energy, so it's a bit expensive, but it has application on both players' turns, which is nice. And it synergizes well with your leader untap 4, and it also synergizes well with your deck in general because you're comboing stuff a lot. The card's good. I don't think I ended up using it throughout the day because I just didn't draw it again. Happens when you have one-offs. But I only played against one deck that dropped Lord Slug on me, and I found that very easy to deal with in the end, so... and then the last 2 cards are just the extra copy of Bean and the extra Realm of the Gods cards. I sided both of these in against pretty much any aggro deck that I played against, because they're the anti-aggro cards of the main deck that I had, and I figured if I play against aggro decks, I can side in just a couple of extra copies of the good cards. So that is the entirety of my Blue Boujack deck profile. which I came first in End of Swiss with, but ended top 8. Hope you guys enjoyed, of course. Definitely stay tuned for this deck breakdown, in-depth thing that I'm going to be releasing, where I go over my matchups throughout the day, but also, more importantly, some of the fundamentals of the deck. I'll be releasing that later in the week. It will take a lot more time to put together than this, I think, because I want to put together like a slideshow kind of thing for it, and make the scenes all nice. So stay tuned for that. It might take me a while to get it out, but I should get it out this week. Check out all the links in the description. Check out Tom's and Jamie's deck profiles for Android 16 and then Red Jiren or Android 18 mil. Check out my streams, I guess, if you want. That link to that will also be in the description, and that's pretty much it from me. So, like I said, stay tuned for this deck breakdown thing if you want to play and see some more Blue Boujack in action. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you.